I am Reverend Nancy Dibelius of the United Methodists of Upper New York. This video will explore an art as prayer practice known as mandalas. Artistic expression as a form of prayer has very ancient roots. It is not just for those who consider themselves artists. Each of us has a creative nature. When you enter into a prayerful space and allow that creative nature to guide your prayer, you make space for God, the Creator, to enter in as well. The word mandala means holy circle. The earliest mandalas were found in prehistoric time. Over the centuries, they were used by many religions and served a variety of purposes. Mandalas were adopted for Christian use in the early centuries of Christianity, but they came into common usage during the Middle Ages. They were used in Benedictine monasteries in the 11th century as an aid in meditation and prayer. Within the next few centuries, they became commonplace in churches and cathedrals. The most well-known Christian form of the mandala is called the rose window. Initially, the rose served as the center, the rose being symbolic of divine love. The most famous of these windows was built in the 13th century in the Chartres Cathedral in France. You can Google rose window Chartres to see images of these windows. Jesus or the Madonna and Child were also frequently used as the center. Mandalas were traditionally circular shapes. The circle represented wholeness and unity. Some forms have very specific styles and traditions. The use of geometric shapes is often common, but the mandala can take on many forms. The intent of using a mandala in prayer is to open a window into holy space where one can encounter God. Different symbols at the center can offer different pathways into God's presence. Remember, you don't pray to a mandala, you pray through a mandala. In more contemporary times, creating your own mandala has been used as a prayer practice. The intent of this practice is to help you process thoughts and feelings that you are often not fully conscious of. By inviting God into the creative practice, you are able to explore and express a level of relationship that you may not be fully aware of or be able to verbalize. The mandala becomes a visual prayer that reflects both your desires and the deep desire of God. In this practice, it is important to reflect on what you created. Ask for God's guidance in processing what you created. This practice can be used to express any prayer you might lift to God. Guidance in a particular life circumstance you are dealing with. Guidance in discerning a next step. It can also be used in response to reading scripture as a way of hearing God's invitation to you in that scripture today. If this is your first experience using art as a prayer form, I would invite you to enter into this practice using scripture as a guide. Today, I will use a reading from Romans chapter 8. Start with a piece of paper as large as you are comfortable with, but at least 8.5 by 11. Start by drawing a circle. You can draw one freehand, or I use something round as a guide. For example, a plate, a pot lid, a bowl. You can use paints, pastels, chalks, crayons, colored pencils. Start either with the center and work outward, or the outer edge and work toward the center. Let your prayer guide you on this. This is a picture of one that I painted a number of years ago. I started with the outer circle. Use the colors and the shapes that you are drawn to. Allow your creative nature to guide you. Don't overthink this. Before you begin, open the practice with a brief prayer. Listen to your heart and let it guide you. Remember, this is a prayer. When you have finished the mandala, reflect on what you have created. What feelings arose for you? Were you drawn to particular colors or shapes? What might they represent for you? Did you resist certain colors or shapes? What might they represent? Invite God into this time of reflection. When you have finished, close this time of prayer with thanks to God and acknowledgement for God's presence. I would invite you to journal about this experience. Go back to the mandala again in a day or two. Reflect again. What might God's invitation to you be? At this point, you might want to wish to pause the video and gather your supplies so you are ready to begin. Before I begin reading, I will offer an opening to this time of prayer. God the Creator, may your Spirit guide and inform our soul. I am reading today from Eugene Peterson's The Message. The reading is Romans 8, verses 26 through 28. Hear these words, and when you are ready, begin to express your thoughts, allowing God to enter into your creative work. Allow God to weave God's Spirit with yours. Meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside, helping us along. If we don't know how or what to pray, it doesn't matter. God's Spirit does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of our wordless sighs, our aching groans. God's Spirit knows us far better than we know ourselves, knows our pregnant condition, and keeps us present before God. That's why we can be so sure that every detail in our lives of love for God is worked into something good.